Hello guys, again Umar with you. This video today maybe will be a long video. The information here I will talk about them is all prepared by my teacher from National Medical University Bogomolets, surgery teacher Sergio Koslov. So the topic for today is goiter. First of all, thyroid hormones are tridothyronine or T3 and thyroxine, also called T4 or tetradiothyronine. They are two tyrosine-based iodine-containing hormones that help regulate our body's metabolism. T3 and T4 are produced by the thyroid gland, which is located in the neck and consists of two lobes that look like two thumbs hooked together in the shape of a V. If we zoom into the thyroid gland, we will find thousands of follicles, which are small hollow spheres whose walls are lined with follicular cells or thyrocytes and are separated by a small amount of connective tissue. Follicular cells are bipolar cells with an apical site that surrounds a central cavity or lumen filled with a colloid, which is a fluid that contains the precursor hormone. Thyroglobulin is a large glycoprotein that's synthesized by the follicular cells and then is secreted into the lumen of the follicle to be stored in the colloid. The basolateral side of follicular cells is in contact with the blood vessels. The basolateral membrane contains a sodium iodine symporter which pumps two sodium ions into the cell. Down there, electrochemical gradients in order to bring one iodine into the cell from blood. Iodine is then pumped into the colloid through an ion transporter called pendrine, which exchanges iodine for chloride. Since they are both negatively charged, once iodine is in the colloid, it undergoes oxidation with the enzyme thyroperoxidase, which changes it into an iodine atom. It is then attached to tyrosine amino acid residues, which are found throughout thyroglobulin. This process is called iodination. Some tyrosine residues are bound by only one iodine, whereas others are bound by two iodine atoms, yielding monoiodotyrosine or MIT and diiodotyrosine or DIT respectively. These molecules are then linked together by thyroperoxidase. Linking one MIT with one DIT creates T3, while linking two DIT molecules creates T4, and both T3 and T4 remaining bound to thyroglobulin. You see, thyroglobulin basically serves as a peptide that stores these hormones in the colloid until it's ready to be used. T4 is greater amount than T3. When the follicular cells are ready to be secreted T3 and T4, they endocytose the thyroglobulin into a vesicle which then fuses with the lysosome. Here, thyroglobulin is cleaved by proteases and T3 and T4 are released right into the bloodstream through the monocarboxylate or MCT transporter. T3 is highly active form with a half-life of 1 to 2 days, while T4 is the less active form with a longer half-life of 6 to 8 days. Production and secretion of thyroid hormones is under control of the hypothalamus-pituitary axis, and the hypothalamus, which is located at the base of brain, secretes thyrotropin, releasing hormone or TRH into the hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system, which is a network of capillaries linking the hypothalamus to. In the anterior pituitary, TRH binds to a surface protein on a group of pituitary cells called thyrotroph cells and stimulates them to release the hormone thyrotropin, also called thyroid stimulating hormone or simply TSH, into the bloodstream. TSH then travels to the thyroid gland and binds to the TSH receptor located in the membrane of follicular cells of the thyroid gland. The TSH receptor is a 7-pass transmembrane receptor, meaning that it's a really long protein that has one end that sits outside the cell and binds TSH. Then the snake-like protein dips in and out of the cell membrane 7 times, and finally it ends on the inside of the cell. The end of the protein within the cell activates intracellular proteins. When TSH binds to the TSH receptor, it goes on to promote every aspect of T3 and T4 production, including iodine pumping, thyroglobulin synthesis, iodination and release of the thyroid hormones into the bloodstream. Once released from the thyroid gland, T3 and T4 enter the blood and bind to circulating plasma proteins, the most important one being thyroxine binding globulin or TBG, but they also bind to albumin and antithyroidine. Bound, the T3 and T4 acts like a reservoir of hormone that's not biologically active. In fact, only a small amount of T3 and T4 will travel and bound in the blood, about 0.03% of T4 and 0.3% of T3, and its fraction is biologically active, which means that this is what gets picked up by virtually every cell in the body. Once inside the cell, T4 is mostly converted into T3 by the enzyme 5-deiodinase. T3 binds to thyroid hormone receptor, which are within the cell's nucleus, and these receptors regulates gene expression. Normally, the thyroid hormone receptor, along with a core pressure molecule, is bound to DNA region called thyroid hormone response elements, and that blocks gene transcription. When T3 binds to its receptor, the core pressure molecule gets displaced and a coactivator molecule attaches instead, allowing gene transcription to proceed. T3 helps to speed up the basal metabolic rate, especially when we have to adapt to the environment. So as an example, exposure to cold weather stimulates the release T3 and T4, and they go on to increase body metabolism and heat production by burning up more energy in the form of sugars and fats. The thyroid hormones helps activate the sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for the fight or flight response. This increases cardiac output, respiratory rate, and mental alertness. Thyroid hormones are also involved in increasing sebaceous and sweat gland secretion and promoting hair follicle growth. They also have a very important development role. They work synergistically with the growth hormone to promote long bone growth and necessary for normal brain development. For all this to work properly, the levels of the thyroid hormones have to stay within the normal range, and to do that, body uses negative feedback, which means that high levels of thyroid hormones tell the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary gland to stop their secretion of TRH and TSH, respectively, lowering thyroid hormone secretion from the thyroid gland. When thyroid hormones are low, the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary glands increase their secretion of TRH and TSH respectively. More TRH increases TSH production in the pituitary, and the thyroid gland gets more stimulation to make thyroid hormones and eventually T3 and T4 levels to go back up to the normal range again. So, summary. As a quick recap, thyroid hormones, so T3 and T4, are produced by the thyroid glands under the control of TSH, which is turn is released by the anterior pituitary under control of TRH, released by the hypothalamus. They mainly help speeding up our basal metabolism, but also stimulate the sympathetic nervous system, helps regulate long bone growth, and are necessary for normal brain development. Thanks a lot for attending. That was all for today.